FromSoft has a lot of Soulsborne games, but what comes next for the game studio? A sequel? A new IP? Who knows? But in this video, we're going to rank the possible sequels that could be coming from worst to best. The worst is a game that I really would not want to see FromSoft make at this time, to the best, where it's one that I think I would jump with joy if I heard. Let's get started with number 5. Dark Souls 4. When it comes to these games, there's always a personal, selfish part of me that would exclusively prefer more and more and more. I'm like a hungry hippo of souls. There isn't a time I've had a new FromSoft game to play and have truly been disappointed. And anytime there's a new game, I find new challenges, new heights, new love for gaming, and a passion that I just can't find in any other series. There's one major problem though. The Dark Souls series has simply told every story it needs to tell. Not only do we have the 3 main games, but we also have 6 DLCs to boot. This is the most comprehensive and cohesive package that FromSoft has ever delivered, and it would have to be another decade or two until I felt there was really a need to return to any of this near-perfect trilogy. Hell, each game even has its own flavor. You have the methodical and world-focused exploration of the first, the crazy custom builds and deliberate combat of the second, and the boss-focused rapidity of the third. And when it comes to Dark Souls 3, the game even began borrowing and repeating things from Dark Souls 1 and 2 because the series had just come to a close. Because of all of this, it feels like every nook and cranny has been effectively explored, and it's the game with the least need to revisit. That being said, if Miyazaki is returning to any of these series, I would be more than happy to eat it up. But every time Miyazaki commits to a new game, we have to consider that that's years of his creative time that's being taken from every new possible project. Whether it's a sequel to a beloved franchise or a completely new IP. I remember when people heard that he was doing a new IP, which turned out to be Elden Ring, everyone was really disappointed that we weren't seeing a follow-up to one of his other properties. Well, now Elden Ring has possibly become the most beloved of all, and that's because we allowed him to move on to new ventures. So as much as it would be fun to have a Dark Souls 4, it's time to let other games shine. And consider the missed opportunities of years of the creative team's time on developing something new and iconic. Number 4, Demon Souls 2. There was a time where Demon Souls 2 would have made a lot of sense. Actually, I think what I really mean is that a Demon Souls DLC would have been epic. It's one of the only games in this list that doesn't have a DLC, and it desperately needs it. Dark Souls really just refined everything in Demon Souls to a more streamlined experience though, so why would we return to a series that definitely has a bit more jank on it? Well, I think Demon Souls explores slightly a different kind of game. A game that feels more video gamey, the linear levels, the single checkpoint. It would be interesting to see a modern take on something that feels so dated, for lack of a better word, and we really don't fully exhaust the premise considering a lack of DLC. And because we've just seen a remake by Bluepoint with the release of PS5, it seems like Demon Souls might be more relevant now than ever before. However, this is really just 0.0000001% higher than Dark Souls 4 because, well, if I heard that FromSoft chose this out of all of the dozens of creative options at their disposal, I can't help but say that I would feel disappointed. Sure, we don't get as much out of Demon Souls as we could have, but the Dark Souls games are essentially spiritual sequels to Demon Souls anyways. And as much as it's fun to talk about how it would be theoretically interesting to go back to the style of these older games, there's 2 issues. First of all, it will never happen. Game development seems to be almost like letting a genie out of a bottle, it just never really goes backwards. Every time we've gotten a new Dark Souls game, all the way through to Elden Ring now, the experiences become more streamlined, more mechanics, faster gameplay. People simply don't want the clunky aspects of these older games, no matter how much they say they do. People are used to things like fast travel, and it's so rare to see these games strip back elements like that and actually do well, although games like Silksong seem to be an example of an exception. And secondly, would we really want that? These games occupy a place in our nostalgia and our history for a reason, and repackaging something historical in a modern day might not really hit the way that you'd expect. It might just feel more like a desperate attempt to recapture a bygone era. Food for thought. Number 3, Elden Ring 2. Elden Ring has the most content of any FromSoft game, so it's not a surprise that it really doesn't feel that necessary to have a sequel. The DLC alone is larger than the entirety of Demon's Souls, so while it feels like there's endless more to explore there, does it really feel that way with Elden Ring? Well, kinda yeah. The world was so gigantic, with such deep and rich lore that I'm sure that they could make another few Elden Ring games and we'd never run dry on new ideas. However, it simply feels like we've been bombarded with Elden Ring for the past few years. It's become the largest cultural phenomenon of all of these games. It's absolutely massive, and now we even have spin-offs with Night Rain. Plus, when we look at a game like Sekiro or Demon's Souls, it feels like something might be missing. DLC? But when I look at Elden Ring, I can't imagine that something needs to be added to make it a fully complete series or game. It is a full package, a complete package, as is. The reason it's higher though than some of the others is that because of the depth of combat, the exploration, the scale of the world, it really feels like the potential here is just limitless. You couldn't add so many new mechanics and fun mechanics to a Dark Souls game while still maintaining that core, stripped-back, traditional Dark Souls experience. However, with Elden Ring, I could see them going wild with new mechanics in a sequel. If they wanted to add flying mounts, why not? Triple jump while you're just not even on a horse? Who's gonna stop them? And while the budget and resources put into Elden Ring were clearly unmatched in the FromSoft pantheon, I suppose it does really seriously feel like there is still more potential to uncover because of all of this depth. It definitely feels like, in my opinion, it's too soon to explore this amazing series again. We've been hit with years of non-stop Elden Ringage, and I'm happy for Miyazaki to approach something else first, but down the line, I could see this one being a great pick. Number 2, Bloodborne 2. Oh, shocking. I know many of you assumed that this would be my first pick, considering how much of a disgusting fan of Bloodborne I am. However, Bloodborne just barely misses out on that top spot. I suppose a huge reason that I feel like these games should have a sequel is because, well, there is just more to tell. And I have to say, I'm not 100% sure that Bloodborne needs to tell more story. It feels like a pretty complete package in my book. The main reason we all just want a sequel here is because we just love Bloodborne 1. But I guess the main question here is there really more to cover? And yes, I think there kind of is. And because of the DNA of Bloodborne, it's not so limited as Dark Souls. There's possible ways I can think of to expand the combat and mechanics of the game. As much as I do feel like the compact experience of Bloodborne is so high quality, there are improvements I could imagine to the parry system that they could implement in a post-Sekiro world. Perhaps only certain attacks could be parried, marked by a symbol above the head of a boss when they do it. In that case, you can't just spam to nullify some of the critical enemies of the game. Reworking Blood Vial farming could be another thing to make the game more streamlined, and with the fanbase mastering the combat of the first game, we could start the sequel with enemies matching the level of challenge found in the DLC. The base game bosses are not necessarily up to scratch, but the DLC shows the potential that this combat offers. There's a short stint in the middle of the game where it's actually focused on these puzzle type bosses, and it would just be so great to see more hunter type bosses that we could fight. To be honest, out of everything, I think a port to PC and a remaster is something that I could see even more value in than simply doing a sequel at this point, because again, you have to think about the years of developer time that's going to take. A simple port or a masterfully done remaster could be something that really makes an impact in the gaming community without taking years of Miyazaki's time. It's a game that I would simply love to see more content from, but I can't say that it deserves it more than number 1, Sekiro 2. This game is just way too short. I've seen people say, well yes, it's the most compact experience. Well, sure, Elden Ring could have cut 90 of the bosses out and exclusively featured the Remembrance bosses. Sure, that definitely would have felt like a compact experience, but it would have felt like a half-baked one to me. While Sekiro is a tight experience, I feel like every time I run through the game again, I'm through it in 3 to 5 hours. I'm just left feeling like, is that it? Is there nothing else? On a first playthrough, Sekiro is a really tough run, and the constant deaths to every boss extend that runtime to a seemingly full-length game. However, the reality is that the content just isn't there. Plus, we didn't get a DLC, with the combat being the most perfected in the entire series. I really can't imagine why we never got more content other than the inner bosses. At this point, I know it's too late, but it would honestly be my favorite to just happily take a Sekiro DLC. but because it obviously won't happen, Sekiro 2 would be my pick for the best sequel of a FromSoft game that could come in the near future. With the way that FromSoft DLCs always up the ante on the high quality bosses of the base game, just imagine what could have been achieved in a Sekiro DLC. It makes me sad every day. But the true number one in this is that I would truly prefer Miyazaki and the teams at FromSoft to work on new IP. Every time that we beg them to create a sequel for a game, they come out with a new banger original concept. Sekiro, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, just to name a few from the recent past years, and I can't wait to see what they have coming up in the future. Every time there's doubts that the studio's gonna go soft, they're gonna make things too easy, they come out with something that truly shakes the gaming industry, and I would love to see something like, I don't know, a Western or something in space. Something that transforms their, formula into another more dynamic setting. But I don't know, what are your favorite ideas for what FromSoft could be cooking up in the kitchen? Let me know down below, and I hope you have a great day. Peace.